The night was quiet inside the tall glass building of Bright Tech Corporation. Most employees had gone home hours ago. Only a few lights were still on, one from the CEO's office, and one from the cleaning lady moving slowly through the empty hallways. Her name was Mary Collins, a single mother, a janitor. And tonight, her tired hands held more than a mop. They held dreams she could never let go of. Every night. Mary cleaned the same offices where people wearing suits and shiny watches worked during the day. She knew their names, their habits, their coffee cups. They never noticed her, but she noticed everything. Mary's back hurt from long hours. Her knees ached, and her old sneakers made soft squeaking sounds as she pushed her cleaning cart. Still, she never complained. She just smiled, whispered to herself, "One more floor, Mary? You got this?" Life had not been kind to her. Her husband Daniel had died in an accident 5 years ago. Since then, Mary had raised her 10-year-old son Eli, alone. They lived in a small apartment on the edge of the city. Every night before work, she tucked him into bed, kissed his forehead, and promised, "Mommy will make life better." "I promise, sweetheart." But deep inside, she didn't know how. She once dreamed of being an engineer. She had loved numbers, codes, and machines. She even started studying computer science in college. But when Daniel passed away, she had to drop out and take any job she could find, even if it meant mopping floors in the same kind of offices. She once dreamed of working in DOT every night at Bright Tech. She watched the young engineers laugh, discuss ideas, and chase success. And every time, she felt a small sting in her heart. That could have been me, she often thought. Yet, she never let sadness win. She kept cleaning, humming soft songs, and saving every dollar she could for Eli's future. That night, something was different. As she walked past the big glass meeting room, she noticed lights still on. Inside, 3 men in suits looked frustrated. There were papers everywhere, and one of them was shouting. Mary didn't mean to eavesdrop, but their voices echoed through the hall. "We can't lose $500 million. One man yelled. "The system keeps crashing. No one knows why." Another replied. She paused for a second, holding her mop midair. $500 million? That was more money than she could even imagine. She quickly looked away, afraid they'd see her, and kept walking. But curiosity was burning inside her. She had always loved solving problems. It was in her nature. Even though she had no degree, her brain still worked like an engineer's. Later that night, she entered the CEO's office to clean. Papers covered the desk, showing complex charts, system errors, and strange codes. She stared at them for a moment, recognizing something familiar, something she had seen in one of her old textbooks. "Wait, this doesn't look right," she whispered to herself. She couldn't help it. She looked closer, tracing the pattern of numbers and symbols. Her mind started connecting dots. Her heart raced. Could it really be that simple? She thought. But before she could think more, her phone buzzed. A message from Eli. "Good night, Mom. I love you." She smiled softly, wiping a tear. Then she turned off the CEO's light, closed the door, and whispered, "One day, baby. One day, Mom will make you proud." As she pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, she didn't know that she had just seen the clue, the one that could save the company $500 million, and soon would be the woman no one could forget. Asterisk, morning sunlight hit the tall glass walls of Bright Tech Corporation like golden fire. From the outside, everything looked perfect. A modern company, successful and confident. But inside those shining walls, panic had already taken over. The company was facing its biggest disaster ever. A tiny error inside their new system had caused a $500 million loss in just 2 days. No one knew how it happened. No one could fix it. Inside the meeting room on the 18th floor, the air felt heavy. Screens were filled with error messages, lines of code and numbers flashing in red. Dozens of top engineers sat in silence, staring at their laptops. At the head of the table stood Mr. Robert Gray, the CEO, tall, serious, and usually calm, but today, his hands were shaking slightly as he spoke. "We can't afford another failure," he said firmly. "Our investors are already calling. Fix it before the markets open tomorrow, or we're finished.
Oh.
The room stayed silent. No one had an answer. Bright Tech's reputation was built on its perfect technology. One mistake like this could destroy everything. Mary Collins, the janitor, was cleaning 2 floors below. She could hear voices from the elevator lobby. She didn't understand everything, but she caught words like system crash, database lost, and 500 million. She paused for a second, her hands tightening around the mop handle. How can so many smart people not find the problem? She wondered. Later that evening, after everyone had left, Mary entered the same meeting room to clean. The whiteboard still had diagrams and calculations written across it. She looked at them carefully. Something about the patterns bothered her. Mary wasn't supposed to touch anything, but curiosity won. She leaned closer, studying the numbers. She didn't know all the technical terms anymore, but she recognized the logic behind the formulas. Something looked familiar, like a missing piece in a puzzle she once solved in college. "It's looping wrong," she whispered. "Why didn't they check that first?" She shook her head, laughing softly. "You're just the janitor, Mary. Don't act like a genius." Still, she couldn't stop thinking about it. The thought followed her all night as she mopped the halls and emptied trash cans. Meanwhile, upstairs, the CEO was in another late-night emergency call. "Sir, our backup servers are failing too. We've tried 3 external consultants. None of them could fix it. If we don't restore the system by morning, the company could lose its biggest client." Robert Gray leaned back in his chair, eyes closed. For the first time in 10 years, he didn't know what to do. At 2 a.m., Mary finished her shift. Her legs were tired, but her mind was restless. As she waited for the bus, she couldn't stop replaying the pattern she saw on the whiteboard. If the data is looping wrong, she thought, then maybe it's not the system. Maybe it's the structure of the input. It was a wild guess, but something inside her felt sure. The next evening, she came back to work early. The office was still half empty, and the engineers were working with frustrated faces. Mary quietly started cleaning the break area near them. One young engineer, Tom, was talking to another. "We've been at this for 48 hours. I think the system's done. Maybe we just rebuild it." Mary couldn't help herself. She spoke softly. "Maybe it's not broken. Maybe it's just reading the wrong loop." The 2 men looked at her, surprised. Tom laughed kindly, thinking she was joking. "That's cute, Mary," he said. "But this is really complicated stuff." She smiled politely and nodded, going back to her work. But deep down, she knew she had noticed something real. Something everyone else had missed. That night, while cleaning the CEO's office again, Mary made a bold decision. She took a photo of the whiteboard with her phone. Not to steal, but to study. She planned to check it at home. After her son fell asleep, as she locked the office door, she whispered to herself, "Let's see if I'm right." Mary didn't know it yet. But that one quiet decision, a photo taken by a janitor, would soon save a billion-dollar company and change her life forever. The night was quiet, except for the ticking clock on the wall of a small apartment. Mary sat at her kitchen table with her old laptop open. The screen was cracked in one corner, and the keys made a clicking sound with every touch. Her son Eli was already asleep on the small couch behind her, hugging his worn-out teddy bear. The light from the laptop softly touched his face as Mary typed. She wasn't an engineer anymore. She was a janitor. But tonight her mind was working like it used to. Sharp, curious, unstoppable. In front of her, she had a photo of the whiteboard from the CEO's office. Numbers, charts, and arrows filled the image. She zoomed in, tracing them with her finger. "They're running the wrong data loop," she whispered to herself. "If this system keeps feeding back the same input, it'll collapse under its own process." She quickly opened a free coding simulator she had downloaded years ago. It was slow, but it worked. Her hands moved nervously across the keyboard. The smell of coffee filled the room as she began testing her theory. For hours, she compared old logic patterns she remembered from her college days. She drew lines on paper, connecting symbols, trying to find the point where everything failed. At 2:47 a.m., she stopped suddenly. Her eyes widened. "Wait, that's it. Just change one small symbol in the formula." A single character, and then she pressed enter. The system ran perfectly. No crash, no delay. Just smooth, clean operation. Mary covered her mouth, her heart pounding. Oh my God, I think I just fixed it. She stared at the screen, tears filling her eyes. A janitor, someone everyone ignored, had just found what the company's best engineers couldn't. But then fear hit her. Who would believe me? No one took her seriously at work. She was invisible there. Even if she told someone, they would laugh or tell her to focus on cleaning. Still, deep inside, something told her this was important, bigger than fear. This could save the company, she whispered, and maybe change my life. The next morning, she dressed carefully, cleaner clothes, a little makeup, her hair tied neatly. She looked at herself in the mirror and smiled nervously. You got this, Mary, she told her reflection. You're not just a janitor. You're a problem solver. At work, she carried her phone with the photo and her notes. The office was buzzing with panic again. The CEO had called another emergency meeting. Everyone looked stressed, some even angry. Mary took a deep breath and walked into the hallway near the conference room. Through the glass, she could see them all, engineers arguing, the CEO pacing, screens flashing red warnings. She hesitated. Should I go in? Her heart raced. She thought of Eli, his smile, his dreams. I'm doing this for him, she whispered. Then she knocked gently on the glass door. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at her. Sorry, she said softly. I just wanted to say something. I think I might know why the system is crashing. The CEO frowned. Mary, you're our janitor, right? Yes, sir, she replied calmly. But I used to study computer science. I saw your whiteboard last night. I think there's a loop error in your data input structure. The engineers exchanged looks, half confused, half amused. One of them whispered, Is she serious? Mary didn't flinch. She walked forward and placed her notes on the table. Her handwriting was neat and clear. She pointed to one specific formula and said, Right here. This part repeats the same input. If you replace it with this, she drew a small line of code. The feedback stops and the system stabilizes. The CEO stared at her. For a long moment, no one said a word. Then he nodded to one of the engineers. Test it, he ordered. The engineer typed quickly. Everyone watched the screen. Seconds passed. Then, suddenly, the red error lights disappeared. The system was running perfectly. Gasps filled the room. The silence broke into murmurs of disbelief. Mary stood still, her heart racing. The CEO looked at her in shock. You just fixed a $500 million problem, he said quietly. Mary blinked, unsure what to say. I just saw something small, she whispered. The CEO smiled for the first time in days. Sometimes the smallest eyes see the biggest mistakes. And in that moment, the janitor, who was invisible to everyone, had just become the most important person in the entire company. Asterisk, the next morning, the entire building buzzed with whispers. Everyone at Bright Tech Corporation had heard the same unbelievable story. The janitor had fixed the company's biggest crisis, but no one really knew what would happen next. Would the CEO believe it was truly her idea? Would he take credit for it? Or would Mary simply disappear back into the shadows, mop in hand, as if nothing had happened? Mary arrived early again, her heart still racing from the night before. The moment she stepped into the building, she felt dozens of eyes on her. People who had never noticed her before suddenly stared, pretending to check their phones as she passed. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed her cleaning cart down the hall. Stay calm, Mary, she whispered to herself. You did the right thing. She reached the CEO's office door and froze. The door was open. Inside, Mr. Robert Gray, the CEO, was talking to a group of executives. When he saw her, he stopped mid-sentence. Mary, can you come in for a moment? He said. Her heart dropped. She slowly walked in, her mind racing with fears. Maybe they thought she had stolen the files. Maybe she had broken company rules. She stood nervously near the doorway. Sir, I'm sorry if I know, Mary, he interrupted gently. You don't need to apologize. He looked at her for a long second, then smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "You saved this company," he said simply. Mary blinked. I just saw something wrong in the loop." "Something," he repeated softly. "That something was worth $500 million. The executives behind him nodded slowly. One of them, a senior engineer, said, "She caught what all of us missed." "What?" Mary's face turned red. She didn't know whether to smile or cry. The CEO leaned forward. "We have an emergency meeting with the full team in 15 minutes, he said. "And I want you there." "Me?" Mary gasped. "Yes, you're the reason this meeting is happening, for good news, not bad." 15 minutes later, the massive conference room was filled. Every department head, engineer, and manager sat around the table, waiting for the CEO to speak. Mary stood quietly at the side, her uniform crisp, her eyes fixed on the floor. Mr. Gray cleared his throat. "Yesterday, we were facing total disaster," he began. "Every solution failed. Every expert said it was impossible." He paused, letting the silence sink in. But then, someone unexpected found the answer. All eyes turned toward him. He looked at Mary and said clearly, "A single mother. A janitor. Someone this company walks past every day." Whispers filled the room. A few jaws dropped. Mary felt her knees go weak. "She solved the $500 million problem in seconds," the CEO continued. "While the rest of us panicked, she looked closely, thought clearly, and saved us all." The room broke into applause, slow at first, then louder. People stood up, clapping and smiling. Mary's eyes filled with tears. She never imagined this moment. After the meeting, the CEO walked up to her. "Mary, I want to offer you a new position," he said. "What kind of position?" she asked softly. "Data analyst. Full training. Full benefits. You've earned it." Mary covered her mouth, unable to speak. "But sir, I don't have a degree anymore," he smiled. "You have something better, talent and courage." The next few days changed everything. Mary's story spread through the company like wildfire. Emails poured in from employees thanking her for inspiring them. Some even said she gave them hope again. One afternoon, as she sat in her small break room, her phone buzzed. A message from Eli. "Mom, I saw your name on TV. You're famous." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She smiled and replied, "No, baby. I'm just being seen for the first time." That evening, as she looked out of the office window, the city lights reflected in her eyes. She had gone from mopping floors to saving a company, not with luck, but with belief, and though her life had changed forever, Mary still whispered the same words she always had. "One more step. Mary, you got this." But now, she wasn't walking alone. The world was walking beside her. The next morning, at Bright Tech Corporation felt different, lighter, brighter, almost alive again. For weeks, the company had lived under a dark cloud of failure and fear. But now, there was laughter in the halls, smiles on faces, and energy in every step. And the reason for that was a janitor named Mary Collins. In one night, she had done what the top minds couldn't. She had fixed the company's $500 million crisis with a simple, brilliant observation. But Mary never called herself a hero. She just said, "I was lucky to see something others missed." The CEO, Mr. Robert Gray, didn't agree. He knew luck had nothing to do with it. He sat in his office that morning, staring out the window, thinking about everything that had happened. He thought about how easy it was to ignore people who didn't wear suits or fancy titles, how the quiet ones, the invisible ones, often held the smartest ideas. He smiled to himself and pressed the intercom. "Call the media team," he said. "We're holding a press conference at noon." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, about what?" "About the woman who just reminded us what true talent looks like." By noon, cameras were set up in the main hall. Reporters filled the space, curious about why the company had called a public announcement so suddenly. Employees gathered too, whispering among themselves. Mary stood in the back, still wearing her janitor's uniform. She didn't know why she had been asked to attend. She felt out of place among the crowd of professionals. Then the CEO walked to the stage. Flashlights went off. The room fell silent. "Good afternoon," Mr. Gray began. "As you all know, our company faced a crisis that could have ended everything. But today, we stand stronger, not because of a system, not because of money, but because of one person." He paused, letting the suspense hang in the air. Reporters leaned forward. "This person isn't an engineer, a programmer, or a manager. She's someone most of us never even noticed before." But she saw what we all missed, turned and looked directly at Mary. "Mary Collins, please join me here." Mary froze. Her heart started pounding. Everyone turned to look at her. Some clapped softly. Others cheered. Slowly, nervously, she walked toward the stage. When she stood beside the CEO, he placed a hand on her shoulder and said into the microphone, "This woman saved a $500 million project. She didn't do it for money. She did it because she cared, because she looked beyond fear and used her mind." The audience burst into applause. Cameras flashed. Mary's eyes filled with tears. "Sir," she whispered, "I don't know what to say," smiled. "Then just say what you feel." Mary took a deep breath, stepped up to the microphone, and said softly, "I was just doing my job. I clean floors so people can work better. I never thought I'd fix a problem like this. But maybe it doesn't matter what job you have. Maybe it matters how you see things." The room went silent for a moment. Even the reporters stopped typing. Then applause thundered again, louder than before. Later that day, Mary's story went viral. News channels ran headlines like, "Single Mom Janitor Saves Tech Giant, Bright Tech's $500 million Miracle." The genius in the cleaning uniform. Social media exploded with praise. People around the world shared her story, a symbol of hope, humility, and hidden brilliance. In the CEO's office, Mr. Gray received calls from investors and clients. Every single one congratulated him. But he knew the truth. The real hero was sitting downstairs, eating lunch with her son. That evening, he called Mary into his office once again. "Mary," he said, "I want to give you something." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter of full scholarship for her to complete her degree in computer science. Mary gasped. "Sir, I don't know what to say. Just promise me one thing," he said. "Don't stop believing that your mind belongs in every room, not just the ones you clean." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She nodded slowly. "I promise." That night, as Mary walked home with Eli, he looked up at her proudly and said, "Mom, you're famous now." She laughed softly, squeezing his hand. "No, sweetheart," she said. "I'm just finally being seen, under the glow of the city lights." The woman who once cleaned offices walked with her head high, ready for a new life that was only just beginning. Asterisk, the world couldn't stop talking about her. Mary Collins, the janitor who had saved a $500 million company. Within days, her story spread everywhere. News channels replayed the video of her standing beside the CEO, shyly smiling as people cheered for her. Headlines called her the woman who changed everything. But to Mary, life still felt simple. She still woke up early, packed lunch for her son Eli, and took the same bus to work. Only this time, people smiled when she entered the building. They didn't look through her anymore. They looked at her. Changed company Bright Tech Corporation was not the same after that day. The CEO, Mr. Robert Gray, called for a new policy, one that would change how the company treated every single FCO employee. He stood before the entire staff and said, "For years, we've believed talent only comes with titles. Mary proved us wrong. From now on, every employee, no matter their position, will have the right to share ideas and solutions." He called it the Open Mind Program. Every week, workers from every level, security guards, receptionists, cleaners, drivers were invited to sit with department heads and share their thoughts. Some laughed at the idea at first, but within months, Bright Tech started seeing more innovation than ever before. The company grew stronger, faster, smarter, because people finally listened to voices they once ignored. Mary's new journey, meanwhile, Mary began her new role as a data analyst trainee. At first, she was nervous, surrounded by computers, technical language, and people far more experienced. But she worked hard, staying late, asking questions, and learning everything she could. Her son Eli would often wait for her in the small cafeteria after school, doing his homework while she coded on her laptop. Sometimes he'd ask, "Mom, do you miss cleaning?" She smiled gently. "I'll always clean, sweetheart, just in different ways. Now, I clean systems instead of floors." Eli laughed every time she said that. Months passed and Mary's confidence grew. She completed her scholarship courses online, often studying late into the night while Eli slept beside her. And one day, she received an email that made her hands shake, a full-time job offer from Bright Tech as a system engineer. She cried quietly as she read it. "Daniel," she whispered to the photo of her late husband on the table. "We did it. A moment to remember." A moment to remember. A year later, Bright Tech celebrated its anniversary with a grand event. Employees filled the hall. Banners displayed the company's new slogan, "Ideas have no uniform." The CEO took the stage and looked at Mary sitting in the front row. "1 year ago, this company was saved by someone the world didn't see," he said. "Today, we honor her again, not as a janitor, not as a miracle worker, but as a reminder that greatness can come from anywhere." He invited Mary to speak. Mary stood, heart pounding. She looked at hundreds of faces, some she once passed silently in hallways. Now, every single one was smiling at her. She spoke softly, but clearly. "I used to think I didn't belong here. I thought smart people had their own world and I was just the one who cleaned it. But now I know. Every person has something powerful inside them. You just have to believe in your own worth." The hall filled with applause. Some people wiped tears, the legacy after her speech. Letters began arriving from around the world. Students, single mothers, workers, and dreamers who said her story gave them hope. Eli proudly told everyone at school, "My mom's a hero." Mary just smiled. She never wanted fame, only respect. And she had finally earned it that night as she sat by her apartment window. The city lights glowing below, she whispered to herself, "Sometimes life doesn't need magic. It just needs courage." She closed her laptop after finishing her latest project for Bright Tech and glanced at Eli asleep on the couch. Her journey had started with a mop and ended with a masterpiece. The janitor who once cleaned the floors of success had now built her own path to it, and in that quiet night, the lesson of her life shone brighter than any city light. Never judge a person by their job. Judge them by their heart, their mind, and their courage to try.